Okay. You okay, Mr. Price?
Yep.
All right. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Wednesday, May the 11th meeting of the Zoning Hearing Board for the City of Reading. I'm going to begin by introducing the members of our board, and we'll start with Mr. Harsh.
Bill Harst, member of the board.
Tom?
Tom Fox, member of the board.
Okay. Jeff?
Jeff Catone, member of the board.
Steve?
Steve Price, solicitor to the board.
Emily?
Emily Diaz Melendez, zoning office.
Okay, thank you. To begin, we actually have two more members of our board, and both of them are tied up this evening, so it's just this group. We have some decisions to render, and these were cases that we heard at last month's meeting. And the first case is Appeal 2022-09. It involved 1240 Chestnut Street. Mr. Price,
Is there a motion to deny the relief requested?
I'll make the motion, and then I'll second.
Okay, Gatone makes the motion. Rabina seconds. Any questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Yeah.
Okay, the next matter was Appeal 2022-14 at 449 North Second Street.
Is there a motion to approve the relief requested, subject to the conditions set forth in the written decision?
So moved.
Okay,
Is there a second?
yeah, Bill seconded.
Okay. Any questions or comments on the motion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed, ayes have it.
Appeal 2022-15. That was 1010 and 1012 Lancaster Avenue.
Is there a motion to approve the relief requested, subject to the conditions set forth in the written decision?
So moved.
Is there a
I'll
second?
second.
Okay, there's a second. Any questions or comments on the motion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
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 Appeal 2022-16, 211 West Greenwich Street.
Is there a motion to approve the relief requested, subject to the conditions set forth in the written decision?
I'll make the motion.
I'll
Second.
second it.
All right, there's a motion and a second. Any questions or comments on the motion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
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 Okay. Appeal 2022-17, 419 Woodward Street.
Is there a motion to approve the relief requested, subject to the conditions set forth in the written decision?
I'll make the motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Questions or comments on the motion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
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 Ayes have it.
Okay. And let's see, 2022-17, 419 Woodward Street.
We just
Oh,
did
I'm
that.
sorry, I did that one. Appeal 2022-18, that's 1001 Scott Street.
Is there a motion to approve the relief requested, subject to the conditions?
I'll make the motion.
I'll
Second,
second.
okay, motion is second. Any questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
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 Just a little bit of housekeeping, Mr. Rabina. Ms. London, there's only 4 members present tonight. So you have the option of getting a continuance till the full board can convene. Or if you go forward with the 4, if there's a tie, it would be a no. That's up to you.
What I'll do, since I have 4 of these hearings, I'll ask those present at the beginning of each one whether they wish to proceed or continue.
Okay,
That's fine. Thank you.
Mhm.
All right. The first appeal this evening is 2022-19. It involves 615, 617, 619 Walnut Street. Ken Pick with Berks County Nonprofit Development Corporation is proposing to annex the property as one parcel and is seeking special exception approval for adaptive reuse to establish 12 residential apartment units. Variances from minimal habitable space requirement, the number of permitted studio units, and an appeal of the September 11th, 2021 zoning officer determination. The subject property is located in the CR Commercial Zoning District. Would you swear in our zoning officer, please?
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Has notice for this appeal been given?
It has.
Thank you. Mr. Price.
Thanks. I'll put some exhibits into the record. Exhibit number 1 is the notice. Exhibit number 2 is proof of publication of the notice. Exhibit number 3 is proof of posting of the notice. Exhibit number 4 is the application, including all of its attachments. And exhibit number 5 is the zoning ordinance of the city of Reading as amended.
Okay, thank you. All right, Ms. London, I'll let you enter your appearance, and then anybody that you're going to have testify, could we swear them in at the beginning? And then that way we can just keep things rolling.
That will be fine. I'll enter my appearance and then I'll be asking the representative of the Nonprofit Development Corporation for the record whether Nonprofit Development Corporation wishes to proceed. Enter my appearance for the Nonprofit Development Corporation applicant, Joan, middle initial E, London, London, Kozloff Stout, 2640 Westview Drive, Wyomissing, 19610. Thomas Dahowski is present on behalf of the applicant, the Berks County Nonprofit Development Corporation. Mr. Dahowski, you heard the solicitor advise that while a quorum of the zoning hearing board is present, the full board is not. There are 4 members present, and that in the event there is a tie, we would not be able to, the relief requested would be denied. Do you want to proceed, or do you want to continue the hearing until the full board can hear the matter?
I wish to proceed.
Proceed. Okay, that's fine. All right, you and Mr. Olson as witnesses will need to be sworn.
Will you both please raise your right hand? Do you swear the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do. I do.
Thank you.
I'm going to call as my first, well, first, let me give a brief summary of testimony and offer of proof. This is an application for special exception and alternatively variances and appeal from the zoning officer for the properties located at 615 to 619 Walnut Street. These are 3 three-story properties on one deed owned by the Berks County Nonprofit Development Corporation. I will be asking judicial notice of the deed and the ownership by the Berks County Nonprofit Development Corporation.
That's-
Proper.
That's granted.
Okay, thank you. The property is located in the CR Commercial Residential District. It's currently vacant. In the past, the property had been in mixed use with office space on the first floor and residential apartments on the 2 upper floors. It's now vacant, and the evidence will show is in disrepair. The Nonprofit Development Corporation is requesting zoning relief to adaptively reuse the 3-story building for 12 single occupancy apartments for housing for veterans who would not otherwise have housing, and office space on the first floor for management and for residents to be able to receive needed services. The variances are for the minimum area for 10 of the 12 apartments and special exception and modification of parking and dimensional requirements due to pre-existing conditions to allow the reuse. As I stated, I'll present the testimony of Tom Duchowski of the Nonprofit Development Corporation and Lee Olson of Olson Design Group. on plans and drawings prepared. The first witness is Mr. Duchowski. And Mr. Duchowski, what is your job title with the Berks County Nonprofit Development Corporation?
I am the housing director for Berks County Nonprofit Development Corporation, or nonprofit arm of Berks County Redevelopment Authority.
Right, and is that the arm that is a 501c3 to carry out the purposes of the redevelopment authority?
Yes, it is.
All right, I've already received judicial notice of what has been marked as applicant Exhibit 1, which is the deed to the property. The exhibits were provided to the zoning officer and zoning hearing board solicitor prior to the meeting, and their receipt has been acknowledged. Okay, and that is the deed to the property. And are you authorized to testify on behalf of the Nonprofit Development Corporation tonight?
Yes,
Are you familiar with the property located at 615, 617, and 619 Walnut Street?
yes, I am.
And how are you familiar with the property?
Well, I'm responsible for the rehabilitation of the properties that the nonprofit acquires, and we acquired those 3 properties in 2021 with the idea of developing them for veterans housing under a lease agreement with Opportunity House. They would actually administer the program.
Can you describe the current condition of the property?
Well, they were vacant for I don't know how long, and after we acquired them, the first thing we did was put a new roof on all 3 because they were deteriorated and leaking. After that was done, we cleaned them out and gutted them out down to the frames. And since then, they've been sitting, waiting to have everything approved to proceed with our rehabilitation and creating veterans housing.
Okay, Mr. Olson will testify as to the exact plans for the property. And you heard my overview of the proposed use. Do you agree that the proposed use is 12 apartments with office space on the first floor?
Yes,
And would that office space be used by Opportunity House to manage and provide services?
yes, it will be.
Can you describe the program for veterans that's offered through Opportunity House in conjunction with the Nonprofit Development Corporation and Redevelopment Authority?
I can't exactly describe their requirements, but we have a agreement to develop the housing, and they would administer the program, obviously, for homeless veterans. Any additional requirements, I am not aware of.
Okay, but it will be administered by Opportunity House under a set of regulations established by Opportunity House?
Absolutely.
Will the
Yeah.
individuals be charged rent?
To a degree, I believe, if they, on a scaled basis.
And is the scale basis based on the individual's income?
Yes.
Okay, can you describe briefly the apartments?
Well, what's left of them, the original apartments are all gone. All the interior walls are gone for the most part. And a lot of the mechanicals are gone. If we
Okay,
get
well, can you
approval and
describe,
proceed, it will be, all the mechanicals will be new, replaced, and new apartments based on Mr. Olson's plans.
okay, can you describe briefly what is being planned for the property? When I say the apartments, the 12 apartments planned for the property.
12 units, single bedroom, bath, and kitchen and living area for each unit.
Okay, will the property be brought into compliance with all codes and regulations?
Yes, absolutely.
All right. I have what has been marked as Exhibit 2. Could you please share the screen, putting that up? And did you take that photograph?
Yes,
And what does that show?
That shows new roofing on the rubber roofing on the buildings. Not all of them, but most of it.
Okay,
They've all the roofs have been redone.
And now I'd like you to go to Exhibit 3. If you could put that up on the screen. All right. There are 6 photographs of the building interior that were marked as Exhibits 3A through 3F. You described earlier having gutted the interior and removed interior walls and removed most of the mechanicals. The photographs that are being shown, did you take these photographs?
Yes,
And do those describe what was your earlier testimony about gutting the interior?
pretty much so. There's not much to see anymore in there except the exterior walls and some supportive walls, framing.
And has the nonprofit and these are, when did you take these photographs?
These were taken this past Monday.
Okay.
The interior photographs were this past Monday.
Okay, has the Nonprofit Development Corporation done anything to change the configuration of the inside of the building? You mentioned leaving structural walls in place. Is that
No,
correct?
we have, correct. Nothing's changed.
Right, one of the variances being requested is from the requirements for the area of 1-bedroom apartments and studio apartments. Is the layout of the building being changed for the 12 apartments?
No, not
Okay,
the building itself, but the interior, new walls, but that's it.
But you are not removing weight-bearing walls, is that correct?
I
To the best of
don't
your
believe so. If we do, they would have to be replaced with some sort of header. Mr. Olson probably has more information on that.
Okay, is the existing layout simply being followed?
Yes,
And do you believe that there would be any negative impacts from the variance from size requirements?
no,
And why not?
not really changing anything. I mean, it originally was, I believe, the same number of apartment units total.
Okay, one of the variances being requested is from the parking requirements in the zoning ordinance applicable to apartments in the CR zoning district, which is 1.5 spaces per apartment and 1 space per 200 square feet of office space, which translates to 26 total spaces, 18 for the apartments. Mr. Olson will testify as to the specific calculations. Do you believe that 18 spaces are necessary for the apartment residents?
You're asking me?
Right, do you believe, for example, do you believe that all of the apartment residents will own cars?
It is very doubtful. There may be a few, but it is my experience that most won't have a vehicle.
All right, so, and, is there any parking that is on the property?
There is limited parking at the rear of the buildings, which I believe we will be using for handicap parking as needed.
Since acquiring the property, has the Nonprofit Development Corporation done anything that reduced parking on the property?
No,
When the property was purchased, is it correct that the parking, it was the same as it is now with 2 spaces in the back?
yes, it is the same.
Are you familiar with the Reading zoning ordinance, which allows an owner to enter into an agreement for off-street parking off-site within 300 feet of the building?
Yes, I have some knowledge of that.
Is there any parking which is in the vicinity of the property?
Well, the closest, I believe, is Poplar and Walnut
And is
parking lot.
Is that a Reading Parking Authority facility?
Yes.
And approximately how far is it from the property?
Well, I believe it's somewhere in the neighborhood of 450 feet, which would be 100 feet beyond the zoning ordinance.
Is the Nonprofit Development Corporation in discussions with the Reading Parking Authority for rental of 26 spaces at Poplar and Walnut Garage?
Yes, they are.
And would the Nonprofit Development Corporation accept as a condition of approval of the variance and special exception, the provision of parking by agreement?
Yes.
Do you believe that the 450-foot versus 300 feet or less would have any negative impacts?
I don't believe so. No.
Why not?
Well, back to the prior statement, I don't think there will be that many vehicles that'll be parked there to begin with, but 100 feet more, if you're walking, shouldn't really make that much of a difference, I wouldn't think.
And for those who are disabled, there's parking behind the building, correct?
Correct.
Do you believe that the project will have any negative community impacts such as traffic, noise, disruption, or overcrowding?
I don't see anything that would create any such situation.
And why not?
There's other apartments in the neighborhood. There's commercial in the neighborhood. Shouldn't really be an issue.
Do you believe that the grant of these variances will have positive impacts?
Oh, absolutely. I think everyone's aware of the need for housing for veterans, so.
And so you believe that the provision of housing will have a positive community impact overall without negative impacts?
Absolutely.
Okay. I don't have any further questions for Mr. Duchowski.
Okay. We'll go through some and see if anybody has any questions of this gentleman. Mr. Price, do you have any questions?
I don't.
Emily, any questions?
No questions.
Okay. Mr. Harsh, any questions?
No questions?
Mr. Fox, questions?
Yes, I have one, sir. Is there any limit to the term if a veteran goes into an apartment? Is there a length of time, or is this indefinite that they can stay?
Well, I don't know for a fact. I would say it's indefinite based upon Opportunity House staff that working with whomever the individual would be and what their needs are. So I'm sure it
Thank you.
varies greatly.
Mr. Gatone?
Just two quick ones. Legally, must it, suppose there's not enough veterans to fill that, would that be open up to others in the community? To say an apartment or two or three? That's my first question. Or is it strictly for veterans?
My understanding, it would be strictly for veterans, and I believe there's an adequate supply to keep the building full, and then some.
Okay, and then the second question, as you know, and Ms. London knows how we are with the parking. Be agreeable if you could get something with that parking lot on Poplar, to have those spaces, not only to rent them, but to have them clearly identified with those addresses.
Oh, I think that would be absolutely necessary. Then we would see that happens for sure.
Okay, all right, thank you.
All right, we would agree to have parking spaces rented as a condition
And identified.
and identified.
Thank you.
We would ask for that, and if that's attached as a condition, that's fine.
I have no questions. Does anybody in the audience have a question of this gentleman? All right, seeing none, continue, Ms. London.
And my next witness is Lee Olson.
He's already been sworn, right?
He has already
Sure.
been sworn.
He's qualified as an expert, but I think what really we need to hone in on here is the size variances for some of these units, so we can get that into the record.
All right, that would be fine. I had marked as an exhibit, applicant exhibit 4, which is a copy of Mr. Olson's resume. So I'd like that just introduced into the record in support of the determination of expert qualification.
It's in.
That's fine.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Olson, are you familiar with the property located at 615, 617, and 619 Walnut Street?
Yes, I am.
Okay, now I have been asked to specifically discuss the variance requested for the size of the apartments. There were plans that you had prepared, which have been marked as exhibits. I believe they are exhibit.
4.
Well, the plans would be 4 is the resume. That would be applicant exhibit 7. I'd like you to go to what's been marked as applicant exhibit 7. Okay, now looking at applicant exhibit 7, the first page, are these photographs of the exterior of the building?
Yes, they are.
And is that the existing, are those the existing conditions of the exterior in the front, and the side along Reed Street, and the rear of the building?
That is correct. The upper left-hand corner is the front facade of the building on Walnut, and the lower right-hand corner is the rear looking in from the side street.
Okay, let's go to the next page, which is C 1.0. And what does this show?
Let me look at my drawings. This is the site plan. I have a larger site plan. On the left-hand side is the existing site plan as it is today. You will notice that there are diagonally hatched parking areas in the upper right-hand corner of the rear of the building. And the drawing on the right-hand side shows the proposed reuse of that parking area, where we have allowed 2 handicap spaces for anyone in the event of there is a driver of an automobile that is living in this building, or if there is an employee who is working in the office for Opportunity House would be handicapped. Also, you will notice on the site plan in the rear of 615 and in the front of 619, there are provisions for a sidewalk lift to get anyone who is not ambulatory up onto the main floor to get into the building for occupancy. Because of the requirements of ADA, a percentage of the units must be made available to handicapped individuals, and we meet that requirement by providing this rear access entrance into 615 and 617. So the first 2 units on the ground floor or the main floor could be utilized and occupied by people with disabilities, and the office on 619 at the corner would be accessible by both employee and the public for access into the office area.
Okay, let's go to the next page, which is page A 1.1. And could you tell us what this shows?
Yes, what this shows is the first floor of the 3 units together. This building, just by the way, when it was constructed, was a 4-unit building. And as Mr. Duchowski testified earlier, in the process of demolishing some of the interior work, tearing off some of the old plaster, et cetera, the remaining walls are the load-bearing walls. So everything that you saw on those photographs indicated that the building is a wood frame building, and everything that we chose to do in terms of rehabbing was to respect the existing construction. It is stable. It will support itself. as Mr. Duchowski started to talk about, taking out some of those structural studs. They're quite sizable. There some are 6x6 in the lower levels and 4x4s on the upper, so it's an all wood frame. We felt that that would be deleterious to the budget, so we kept these 4 units in their original width, and therefore what you see are the layouts on this particular floor. On 615, you have a, I'm sorry. Okay, on 615, which is the unit to the left, you would have a 1-bedroom apartment in the front and 1-bedroom apartment accessible in the rear. It's almost a mirror image for 617 in the middle. And on the far right, you have the office structure, which has components of 3 to 4 offices. These would be for offices for staff of not only Opportunity House, but there would be an opportunity for nursing, clinical, and other social services agencies to come and meet by appointment with any of the people living in the 12 units.
Now with the size of the units is one of the variances that is being requested, because for a 1-bedroom unit, there is a minimum area under the ordinance of 550 square feet, and some of the units are less than that. Is that a byproduct of leaving the structural load-bearing walls in place?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Now, how many bedrooms per proposed apartment unit?
1 bedroom per apartment unit.
Okay, does each proposed apartment unit also have a kitchen and a bathroom with a toilet, sink, and shower?
Yes, ma'am.
And are all intended for single occupancy?
That is correct.
And let's-
What is the square footage of those apartments that aren't being, the walls aren't being moved?
For instance, Mr. Price, on unit 1 in the front of 615, that square foot is 416 square feet. In the unit in the back of 615, that is 490 square feet. And I would make the assumption that that's a mirror image of unit 617, which is in the middle.
Okay,
Okay,
thank you.
now
You bet.
looking at the next page, which is page 8.1.3, what does this show?
A 1.3 is the top level. That is the 3rd floor. It shows almost the unit on the left is a 1-bedroom, and the unit on the right is a 1-bedroom. We go to only one. I'm sorry. We maintain the 1-bedroom units throughout the whole complex, but here up on the 3rd level, in order to meet the 1-bedroom requirement, we had to forego utilizing the middle unit in 617, and we took that space and we divided it so that we had a self-contained bathroom and bedroom for 615 and 619.
Okay, so the attempt was made as much as possible, preserving the interior structural walls to create units that met or came close to the size requirements for 1-bedroom units? Is that
Yes, ma'am.
correct?
That's correct.
And now I'd like you to go to the next page, which is
But
page,
again, what are the square footage of those 2 on the 3rd floor?
Okay.
We need that information for the decision.
Steve, so that's included on page 2 of the addendum that I forwarded to the board members in my email with the staff report.
okay, if Mr. Olson could just reiterate that.
Yeah, looking at the drawing of A-1.3, Mr. Price, the apartment on the 3rd floor of 615 is 659 square feet, and the unit for 619 is 593.
So they exceed the square footage.
That's correct.
Okay.
Okay. Now I'd like you to go to page, next page, which is A.1.0.
A 1.0, okay.
And does that show the basement?
That's the basement, yes, ma'am.
And to confirm, there will be no occupancy in the basement?
That is correct.
Will the basement be mainly building, mechanical, and storage?
It would probably be all storage. There may be some mechanical. We have not done any mechanical work yet. It would probably be, we were thinking that the units are going to be, terms of mechanical equipment for heating and ventilating and cooling would be mini splits. We like to use point of use hot water heaters. Because the units are so small, we may be putting larger hot water heaters in the basements of the 3 buildings to serve the units, up through to the 3rd floor. The spacing is so tight to get a 20-gallon water heater under the sink would take up some valuable vanity space. So again, that's to be determined finally, but we would use the basement primarily for storage and some minimal mechanical space as well.
Will there be any changes to the height or footprint of the building?
No, ma'am.
Are you familiar with the requirements of the zoning ordinance on off-street parking?
Yes, ma'am.
Does the number of apartment units trigger off-street parking requirements?
Yes, it does.
And do you agree that the requirement of 1.5 spaces per unit for 12 units will require 18 spaces?
Yes,
And that there needs to be 1 space for every 200 square feet of office space in this, for that office use?
yes,
And does that mean 18 spaces for the apartment units plus 8 spaces, doing the math, for 1,505 square feet of office space?
that is correct.
26 spaces?
Yes, ma'am.
To the best of your knowledge, has there ever been off-street parking on this site beyond the 2 spaces, which you and Mr. Duchowski have already testified are accessible ADA required spaces?
To my knowledge, the only place that was available to park at any time during this life of this building would have been in the rear.
Is there any way that parking could be provided on this site?
The only way would be what we have come up with when we did our C1 drawing to show putting handicap parking. It's very difficult to maneuver into the back of that alleyway. Well, it's not even an alleyway. It's just it's the balance of the property. There may be an alley there, but we could not find any through traffic east-west. So the short answer is no. There's just, other than 1 or 2 spaces, that would be it.
So if there were parking requirements, they would have to be accommodated off-site. Is that
Yes,
correct?
ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Do you believe that there are hardships unique to this property which would preclude literal compliance with zoning ordinance requirements for off-street parking and apartment size?
Yes.
And what are those hardships?
Well, in order to meet the current minimum space requirements for habitation, this building complex could not ever meet them, with the exception of major renovations structurally and also to the framing itself inside. You might be able to reduce the number of units, but then it doesn't pencil out as being a very viable project. The parking, you could never get parking to accommodate the, even if you reduced the number of living quarters to half of the 18 and down to 9, you still could not accommodate the parking as per the zoning requirements of 1.5 parking spaces per unit.
Was any of this hardship self-created by the owner?
No,
If variances are needed and the modifications can't simply be granted as part of the special exception for adaptive reuse, will the grant of the variances for parking and apartment size create any negative impacts on neighboring properties and the surrounding area? Will the
Re-
grant of the variance create any negative impacts?
well, the
Or-
granting of the granting of the variance, no. If anything, I think it would alleviate any concern of people having parking in the neighborhood. I think the variance for parking off-site is a necessary element to make this a viable entity in the neighborhood.
Okay, and what about the variance or special exception to allow the smaller one-bedroom apartments? Do you believe that that would create any negative impacts?
No, I do not.
Are the variances requested the minimum variances that will afford relief?
Yes,
Will there be any impact on light and air to neighboring properties?
none whatsoever.
Okay, will there be a positive community impact if the adaptive reuse special exception or variances requested were granted?
I certainly believe so. It will add more life into the neighborhood itself. There is a variety of social, commercial entities in and around the neighborhood. I think it would add to it as well. It's a beautiful building, and I think adding life to it will just generate more interest in the neighborhood.
Right. Are all the opinions that you rendered this evening made with a reasonable degree of professional certainty?
Yes, ma'am.
I don't have any further questions.
Okay, we'll see if we have any questions from our group. Mr. Price, any questions?
None.
Emily, any questions?
No questions.
Okay, Jeff, Mr. Gatone?
I assume, is there federal money involved with this? I have a question because it's involving veteran. Is the federal government going to have their hands on some of the input of the funds?
I think Mr. Duhowski probably is the better one to answer that question.
Yes, there's ultimately federal fundings involved, but
Well, the only reason I asked that, and this is from my classmate, Lee Olson. I'm certain that you're going to have these apartments designed beautifully. We know Mr. Olson very well. There's no danger with the degree of disability. Some of these veterans might be severely impacted, and of course, it would be to try and rearrange it with some of these conversions. So you don't have to worry about that, I assume, Lee.
No, that's correct. Thank you, Jeff. The ability for anyone to get into the building being handicapped is pretty simply solved with the lifts to get up to the main floor, and they would just be limited to the main floor itself. There's no elevator requirement for this building at all. If there is a veteran who is severely handicapped who can't ambulate in a building like this, there would be other facilities in the Veterans Administration system that could accommodate. Everything will be ADA accessible in terms of reach and clearances in those units that are ADA accessible. Anything beyond that, Jeff, I don't know that any veteran who would be that incapacitated could live here. That would be a special condition. So these are
Thank you.
homeless. Yeah, these are homeless gentlemen and women who need a place, and we are going to accommodate them with ADA accessibility. I would think anything beyond that, where special needs are identified, that would be probably turned over by Opportunity House to another living facility in the neighborhood.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Tom, questions?
No questions.
Okay. I really have no questions. I think, Lee, you answered the question about apartments being slightly smaller than what is required, and you did a good job on the parking, so we appreciate that. All right, is there anybody in the audience that has any questions of Mr. Olson? All right, seeing none. Ms. London, anything you would like to wrap up with?
I would like to move for the admission of my exhibits.
Okay,
They're admitted.
All right, thank you.
all right. So we thank all of you for your participation. We'll issue our decision at next month's meeting. I think it's nice.
Phil, is there anybody in the audience who wants?
I did ask that.
Oh, did you? Okay.
Yeah. I didn't see anybody and Emily didn't post anybody. Anyway, I think it's nice to see that we're doing something for our veterans. Our country does a lot for a whole lot of people that contribute not a whole lot, but these guys gave it all. So thank you, everyone. And that closes this appeal. We'll issue the decision at next month's meeting. You need not be here. The decision will be mailed to you. So thank you again.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Rabina,
Yeah,
Mr. Cook, who has a conflicting meeting starting in about 20 minutes. He's appeal number 3, and he's requested it. He has a very brief presentation if he can go forward on Carbon Street.
let's see. Tell him because it's him, he'll have to wait till next year.
You guys are tough.
Let's see, that would be 20, 21, 22, excuse me, 20, appeal 20, 22, 21, right?
Correct.
Okay, yes, let's do that. We'll do that. And I hope the rest of our people understand, but we try to work with attorneys and we try to work with the constituents and their applicants, so. All right,
Good.
Thank you all very much. Appreciate it.
Thanks,
You're
Lou.
welcome.
We'll talk later.
Lee.
okay. Would you swear in our zoning officer, please?
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear the testimony about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Has notice for this appeal been given?
It has.
Thank you. Mr. Price?
Thanks. I'll put some exhibits into the record. Exhibit number 1 is the notice. Exhibit number 2 is proof of publication of the notice. Exhibit number 3 is proof of posting of the notice. Exhibit number 4 is the application, including all of its attachments. And exhibit number 5 is the zoning ordinance of the city of Reading as amended.
Okay. Mr. Cook, if you'd like to enter your appearance, and if you're going to have anybody else testify, we'll swear them in at this point, and then you can get started and we'll get you on your way.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Mrs. Diaz and Sandy, thank you very much for your consideration here this evening. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Wonderful. Thank you, Mr. Price. I want to thank everybody for their consideration. My name is Mark Cook. I'm here on behalf of the applicant, Nathan Fisher, Cook and Cook, 217 North 6th Street, Reading, PA, 19601. And we could go ahead and have Mr. Nathan Fisher sworn if that's okay with the board.
Sure.
Hey, go ahead.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear the testimony about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, I told Mr. Price I would be brief. We have a situation here where we're essentially asking for relief to reinstitute a second floor apartment that had previously been in play for many, many years. Mr. Fisher is the owner of that property. He's going to guide us through a little bit of the testimony there. We have a couple of pictures for you. Very simply, we're in the R2 district. We have an existing residence and an accessory building. We're asking for permission via variances to basically put a second floor apartment in that accessory building. And essentially, there are no other exterior changes. With that, if we could, Mr. Fisher, you've been sworn, and would you state your name and address for the record, please?
My name is Nathan Fisher. My address is 712 Rishel Drive, York, Pennsylvania, 17406.
All right, Mr. Fisher, you're the owner of the property, is that right?
I am.
And just a little bit of history here, that house and the garage that are there, they were built in approximately the 1930s, is that right?
That is correct.
Your grandparents acquired this property in about the 1950s, is that fair?
Yes,
At some point in time, they made some additions to the garage and to the dwelling that's above that garage, is that fair?
that's correct.
In your words, has that second floor apartment, was that rented continuously from, let's say, approximately the 1950s or 60s until about 2013?
Yes, it has.
Mrs. Diaz, if you could pop up our exhibits and pictures, please, I would greatly appreciate that. All right, and so while Emily is getting that for us, essentially taking a look at page 1, if we could just back up one hair. Thanks, Emily. So Nathan, essentially what happened is in 2013, you and your brothers were the owner of this property, is that right?
That is correct.
And you had a tenant, in your words, what did they do to the property?
We had a tenant there for several years and they pretty much gutted the property, destroyed it.
And in the process then of going through inspections, you were essentially left with an economic issue that you couldn't really handle at that point in time. Is that fair?
That is correct.
And just so the board can see, this is essentially one of the inspection reports from 2013. And at that time, did you make a request to the city to essentially remove the second floor apartment from the city's rolls?
My brother did, yes.
Right. And did you have a real understanding that you would have to go through this process again when you gave up that particular use?
No,
Now, does your grandmother still reside in the original house that's on the property?
he does.
And Emily, if you could scroll down to page 2, please. And Mr. Fisher, is this essentially, you can see Carbon Street at the bottom of page 2. There's the existing dwelling fronting on Carbon Street. Is that right?
That is correct.
And then at the rear of the building would be the existing 2-car garage with the second floor proposed apartment. Is that right?
That's correct.
All right. Emily, if you could scroll to page 3, please. And here we have shown the board that you are capable of essentially putting a parking space to the rear of that existing house. Is that fair?
Yes,
Page 4, please, Emily. Mr. Fisher, is this essentially the first floor plan of that accessory building?
it is.
And Emily, if you could scroll to the next page, please. And here you have proposed, this is the anticipated living area on the second floor of that accessory building. Is that right?
That is correct.
You have had a chance to take a look at the staff report. The staff report indicates that in the event that the relief is granted here, you have to agree that this will not be a 3-bedroom unit. Are you understanding that?
I do.
And you would agree that that den area would not be a bedroom. Is that fair?
Yes,
And I think the second part of the staff report indicated as well that the 2 parking spaces in the garage beneath the proposed dwelling would have to be dedicated for parking. Is that right?
yes,
So Emily, if you could scan to the next page, please. Is this a picture of the front of the 2-car garage and the proposed dwelling on the second floor?
it is.
Emily, if you could scan next page, please. And now, Mr. Fisher, we're just going to briefly go through these, but you have already done the work. Is that right? This is the kitchen of that unit.
Yes,
Next page, please. What room is this?
that is the den.
Which would stay as a den as we've discussed previously. Is that right?
Correct, correct.
Next page, please. Is this one of the bedrooms?
That is the living room.
Living room? Next page, please.
And that is the one of the bedrooms.
Next page, please.
Bathroom.
Bathroom, obviously. And then just showing the board, is this the exterior entrance from the property?
Yes, it is.
All right, so as part of the proposal, you've obviously willing to agree that you are willing to and are complying with all of the other codes at this point in time. Is that right?
That is correct.
The interior of the building, is that pretty much the way it has been, well, for as long as you know?
Yes, no changes.
No changes to the exterior either, am I right?
Correct.
So what you're essentially doing is asking for permission to replace what had previously been there back in 2013.
That is correct.
And then I just wanted to point out that there is a request for a variance to reduce the square footage of a 2-bedroom apartment, which your understanding is from 700 feet to what is the square footage that is existing in this building?
I believe it was 678.
It's 668 or 678? Do you know off the top of your head?
Off the top of my head, I think it was 678.
Okay. Emily, do you agree with that? Is that what your analysis shows?
Yes,
That's what's in
it
your staff
was-
report.
Yes, per my staff report, 678.
So at this point, gentlemen, we are essentially asking for the ability to rent out this second floor. Mr. Fisher's mother still, or grandmother still resides in the front building. There are essentially no exterior changes. Essentially, they have refurbished the interior of the second floor for that proposed second dwelling unit. And at this point, I would have no further questions for Mr. Fisher.
Okay, thank you. All right, questions from Mr. Price?
I have none.
Questions from Emily?
No
Nothing?
questions.
Okay. Questions from Mr. Gattone?
No questions.
Questions from Mr. Fox?
No questions.
Questions from Mr. Harsh?
No questions?
No questions from Mr. Rabina. Any questions from anybody in the audience? Okay, seeing none. Anybody have any comments that they would like to add at this point? All right, hearing none, I think that wraps up this appeal. And
Mr. Chair-
we'll
Mr.
issue
Chairman,
a
I would-
decision. Go ahead.
I would just move the admission of the exhibit that we provided to you, and I want to thank everybody again for their willingness to slide us up on the schedule. We greatly appreciate that.
My pen.
Okay, thank you. And the decision will be mailed to you. You need not be present. We'll make the decision at next month's meeting.
Thanks
Thanks
again.
to
Have a
everyone.
good evening.
Okay, good night. Okay, Sandy, are you okay?
Yes.
All right, the next matter before us is Appeal 2022-20, 431 West Oley Street. Vanessa Roas is seeking a special exception approval to establish a daycare in a private home at the subject property. The subject property is located in an R3 residential zoning district. All right, and I believe she's present. Would you swear in our zoning officer, please?
Do you swear the testimony about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Has notice for this appeal been given?
It has.
Okay. Mr. Price?
Thanks. I'll put some exhibits into the record. Exhibit number 1 is the notice. Exhibit number 2 is proof of publication of the notice. Exhibit number 3 is proof of posting of the notice. Exhibit number 4 is the application, including all of its attachments. And exhibit number 5 is the zoning ordinance of the city of Reading as amended.
Okay, Ms. Roaz, if you want to unmute yourself and then we will swear you in.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear the testimony about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Ms. Rojas, if you'd like, I can get some basic information from you to help form the record. Is that okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay, would you please state your full name for the record?
Yes, I am. Vanessa Mosquea Rojas
And where do you reside?
at 431 West Oley Street, Reading, PA 19601.
And with whom do you reside there?
I have a 13-year-old daughter and I have an 8-year-old son.
And do you own that property, ma'am?
I do not.
You rent it?
I do.
And do you have permission from your landlord to seek this zoning relief?
Yes, I do.
Okay, and if we needed a written approval of that, you could provide that to the zoning office?
Yes, I can. I have.
And is your home a semi-detached home or is it a row home? And what kind of home is it?
It's detached. They're close by, but they're detached. It has an alley in between.
Okay.
side.
So you have what's called the Baker's Alley between.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bake. Okay.
Right. And how many children do you want to provide daycare to?
4, because I have one 8-year-old of my own. That would be 5 altogether.
And what would your hours of operation be?
I would love them to be from 7 to 6 p.m.
That's Monday through Friday?
Yes, sir. Monday through Friday.
And you wouldn't need any additional helpers to do that? That would be allowable under Pennsylvania law?
Yes, it would be allowed.
And have you received your license from the state to operate a daycare?
Yes, I have.
Have you operated a daycare anyplace else in the city?
No,
Okay, so this will be your first go for it, right?
it would.
Now, where you live, there's no, is it fair to say that off-street park or on-street parking is pretty congested?
It's actually not congested. There's not many cars here. Throughout the day, we have a lot of parking available.
All right. Now, do you think most of your clientele would be driving and dropping their children off or walking them to you?
Walking.
And do you have an outdoor area where the children can play, like a backyard?
I do.
And is that sufficiently fenced in that the children couldn't get out into the street or the alley or anything?
Yes, there's a fence where I can put it in and take it out if I please to, if I'm working or if I'm not working. It's detachable but well placed.
And would you be providing food for the children, or would they bringing their own food?
I would like to provide the food for them.
And would this solely be on the first floor of your home?
Yes, sir.
And the first floor of your home consists of a parlor, a living room, a kitchen,
And the bathroom, correct.
and a bathroom. So you do have a bathroom on the first floor for the children.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Have any of your neighbors expressed any opposition to this?
No, they're very supportive into my idea.
And you wouldn't need any signage or anything like that for your daycare. It just still look like a residential home, right?
Yes, correct.
I have no other questions for Ms. Rojas.
Okay, I'm going to start with one quick one. What ages of children are you going to try to attend to?
From 6 weeks up until they start pre-kindergarten, which is 4 years old.
Okay, all right, thank you. All
You're
right. Mr. Harst, any questions?
No questions.
Mr. Fox? You're muted, Mr. Fox. Oh,
No questions.
okay, Mr. Gatone.
Just once again, how many children do you want to take care of?
4. I have one who's 8, we'll make it 5. And I think that's just good enough.
Okay.
I do have one additional question. For your drop off and pickup, you said that there isn't too much traffic. Are you like in the middle of a block? Are you at the end of a block?
I'm in 5th house from the beginning of the block. I would say I'm towards the middle of the block.
Okay,
I
all
would be-
right. Because there's a couple of issues that we have always dealt with home daycares. One is, first of all, is security. Second of all is that they have the appropriate play area. And perhaps third and most important is that there is a safe pickup and drop off area. Now, you said most of your people will walk and that may resolve that. But I think those are 3 things that you know, if you were to be granted this, that you would need to spend special attention to.
Awesome.
Okay. All right. Any questions, Mr. Price?
None.
Emily, any questions?
So you had mentioned about not really having any signage. There is a flag sign on your front lawn. Will you be keeping that or will you be removing that?
Oh, that's what you meant by signage. I'm so sorry. I didn't realize. Yes, if it's allowable, I would like to keep it. But if it's not allowed, then I can just take it off.
I believe you're going to need a zoning permit. So for any
Okay.
signage, so just if you are provided relief, just know if you do have any signage on your property, you will need a zoning permit, a separate one from the one you submitted.
Okay, I wrote it down. Thank you very much for that information.
No problem.
I'm
right.
curious now, I didn't see the property. I know the neighborhood. I grew up right around the corner, top of Hawkins Street. That was my home. The sign, is it in the where the city owns the property right next to the curb, or is it up back? More
It's on
toward
her
the-
lawn.
On her lawn, okay.
Hmm?
Thank you.
You're
Okay. All right. Is there anybody in the audience that has any questions of this applicant? All right. Seeing none, Ms. Rojas, anything you wish to add?
No, that'll be all. Thank you very much for your
Okay,
time.
anybody else have any comments or questions? Seeing none, I'll close this appeal. We'll issue a decision at next month's meeting. You need not be here. The decision would be mailed to you. So thank you all very much.
Thank you very
And
much.
We'll proceed to the next appeal.
Have a good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night, everyone. Thank you.
All right. Now, if we're back on track, this should be 1849 Perkiomen Avenue.
Yeah, and Mr. Rabina, I think this may have been in front of the board before, correct?
I think so. There's some, go ahead. Yeah, this,
Yes.
yes, it was before us before.
Okay,
Because remember the garages and the fence and a number of things related to that.
so
All
I think
right,
unless there's people in the audience that need more testimony, you can adopt the transcript from the prior, and then if I think Ms. London's involved in this one. If she wants to supplement, she can. do
Yeah.
that as well, but
okay.
I think the issues are the same as the last time.
The
we-
issues are similar issues, but we don't believe that the record was complete in 2018. And we want to put on testimony from Mr. Hain regarding the property and regarding the necessity of the variances and the hardship presented.
Okay, let's take a stop here because we've kind of gone past the beginning. Would you swear in our zoning officer, please?
Do you swear the testimony about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay, thank you. Has notice for this appeal been given?
It has.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Price.
Thanks. I'll put some exhibits into the record. Exhibit number 1 is the notice. Exhibit number 2 is proof of publication of the notice. Exhibit number 3 is proof of posting of the notice. Exhibit number 4 is the application, including all of its attachments. And exhibit number 5 is the zoning ordinance of the city of Reading as amended. I guess, Ms. London, enter your appearance and then.
Right.
Yes,
And swear in anybody that you're going to have testify. So go
Yes.
ahead.
I'll enter my appearance for Ponce's Home Investors and Mark Ponce, Joan, middle initial E, London, Kozloff Stout, 2640 Westview Drive, Wyomissing 19610. Before we begin, I want to ask Mr. Ponce if you could unmute yourself, Mr. Ponce. Were you present at the beginning of the hearings where the zoning hearing board solicitor explained that while a quorum of the zoning hearing board was present, the full zoning hearing board was not, only 4 members present, and that a tie will result in relief being denied?
I was.
And based on that, do you want to proceed or do you want to continue the hearing till the full board can hear it?
Yeah, we'll continue.
You want to, do you want to, did you say you want to continue to a later date or proceed?
No, we'll continue today.
Okay, do you mean proceed today?
Yes, proceed today. I'm sorry.
Okay, okay. Got to have a term right there. Sorry to lapse
I
into
gotcha.
please. All right, I'm going to have the testimony presented of Mark Ponce, the property owner, and Robert Hain from Burke Surveying.
All right, will you both please raise your right hand? Do you swear the testimony about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
All right. I'll call Mark Ponce first. Mr. Ponce, could you state your name and address?
Mark Ponce, 1007 Summit Road, Temple, PA, 19560.
And I have the deed to the property, which has been marked as Exhibit 1, which was forwarded to the zoning officer and zoning hearing board solicitor.
Yep.
And looking at what's on the screen, is this the deed to the property?
Yeah, that's admitted, Joe. That's okay.
Okay, all right. I'd like you though to turn to page 3, Schedule C. Third page of the third page of the deed. Just looking at that briefly, does that describe the improvements to the property as a 2-story brick house and 18 garages?
You asking me?
Yes.
Yes.
And are those the existing uses? Are those the existing improvements on the site?
Yes, nothing's changed.
Okay. What are the existing uses to date on the site?
Well, the garages are for rentals for people to put their cars in, 3 apartments, and then there is a storefront.
Okay, so that is retail?
I believe so. Yeah, yeah. Well, right now it is.
Okay, and were those in place when you purchased the property?
Yes, they were.
Okay, and are these uses which, to the best of your knowledge, are non-conforming in the R3 district?
Say that again, sorry.
All right, well, let's strike that. How many apartments are on the site?
3.
3. And are the apartments and you had testified to retail space and garages in any different configuration than when you purchased the property?
No,
Have you enlarged any of these uses since purchasing the property?
not at all.
Is that property?
Okay, yep.
Have you enlarged any buildings since purchasing the property?
No,
Is there off-street parking on the property?
not currently.
Okay, based on the size, you've requested variances from the use and dimensional requirements in the R3 district to subdivide the property. And you asked the same in 2018. If you were allowed to subdivide the property, would its use change in any way?
No, not at all.
Would there be any change in the appearance of the property?
No,
Why do you wish to subdivide the property?
well, the two uses really don't match up, and it'd be hard to make it marketable later on when I would determine to sell it.
Okay, and when you say they don't match up, what does not match up?
Well, if an investor is looking for a apartment building, he may not want the garages, and vice versa. If the investor is looking for garages, he might not want the apartment building to go along with it. So therefore, it makes it more of a challenge to sell the property, where if we were to divide it, it'd be more marketable.
Okay, so, and the current configuration of the property, though, was a condition when you bought the property?
Yes,
And if you were able to subdivide, would the sole change be the lot line on a plan?
yeah, we're doing nothing else.
And do you understand that if the variances that you request would be granted to allow subdivision of the property, that you would still need subdivision approval from the city?
I understand that.
Okay. I don't have any further questions for Mr. Ponce.
Okay. Mr. Price, any questions?
I have none. I'm very familiar with the property. I remember the last hearing. Yep.
Okay. Emily, any questions or comments?
No questions.
Okay. Mr. Harsh, comments or questions?
No questions.
All right, Mr. Fox,
No questions.
Mr. Gattone,
No questions?
and I have none. Is there anybody in the audience that has any comments or questions for this applicant? It doesn't appear there's anybody. Okay,
Mhm.
so seeing that, Ms. London, you have anything you want to wrap up with? And other than that, close
I
the
would like,
appeal.
I'd like to call my next witness.
Oh, okay. Go ahead.
I'd like to call Rob Hain. Mr. Hain has already been sworn. Mr. Hain, could you state your name and place of employment and job title?
My name is Robert D. Hain. I work for Burke Surveying and Engineering, 311 East Main Street in Fleetwood, Pennsylvania, 19522. The Vice President and Senior Project Manager for Burke Survey.
Okay. Do you hold any professional licensures?
I'm a licensed surveyor in the state of Pennsylvania.
Okay, I have what's been marked as applicant exhibit 2. Could you share that, Emily? Okay. Be the resume?
And we'll accept them as an.
Stipulate to that.
Okay, all right, so you're stipulating, and once we find the resume, that will be,
It's in,
that will
it's
be
in the
in-
record. We'll admit it.
oh, okay, and that reflects Mr. Haynes' work experience, certifications, and licensure. And he has been qualified as expert. Mr. Hayner, are you familiar with the property located at 1849 Perkiomen Avenue in the city of Reading?
I am.
And how have you become familiar with this property?
We were contracted by Mr. Ponce to generate the plan that is before the board today.
All right, and what, the plan is up on the screen. I believe it's been marked as Exhibit 3. What, could you tell us what that shows? Actually, Exhibit 3. Could you tell us what that shows?
So this plan shows the property. You can see it's mostly triangular in shape. It's narrow along the frontage on Perkiomen Avenue, where the existing structure, right under where it says Lot 1, that's the existing building that has a retail shop on the ground floor and residential apartments upstairs. There's an L-shaped garage building that extends along the left side of the property and along Forest Street, and another irregularly shaped building along the eastern boundary that's also several garage units. There's access off of, I believe it's hard to tell looking at this version of the plan, but I believe that's 19th Street to come into the back there to exit those garages.
Okay, would there be, to the best of your knowledge, any changes to the building or any additional impervious area on the site if the variances to allow subdivision were granted?
No, no proposed changes to the, no improvements are proposed, just simply to divide the existing uses.
Okay, so would any pre-existing nonconformities change?
No, the pre-existing nonconformities would remain.
All right. Do the configurations of the buildings allow compliance with setbacks?
No, how close the buildings are to one another, we cannot, the new lot line cannot provide for compliance with the required minimum setbacks.
Okay, but as far as the setbacks from the street, as far as setbacks from the road, for example, or from the street, for example, does the current configuration allow compliance with the setbacks?
No, the existing buildings are even right up against the property lines, if not, within close proximity. Again,
And that would not change due to the subdivision, correct?
that is correct.
Are the retail uses and garages permitted uses in the R3 district?
They are not.
So there is a table in the R3 section of the zoning ordinance with dimensional standards. So do dimensional standards for those uses appear in the tables in the zoning ordinance?
They do not. They're not listed as permitted uses within the district, so there is not specific provisions for minimum required setbacks from property lines for them.
And as with respect to the residential use, is there any provision in the ordinance for apartments within a house structure?
I do not believe so, no.
Okay. What is the closest approximation?
The closest approximation that for the information we show on the plan is for a low-rise apartment.
And what is the minimum lot size for the low-rise apartment?
Minimum lot size for a low-rise apartment is 3,000 square feet.
Okay, and would that be complied with under the subdivision plan as prepared?
Yes, the smaller lot is lot 1, which is 3,230 square feet.
So that would meet the requirements. If the uses do not change, will parking demands change at all?
No, they should not.
And if the uses do not change, will there be any change in stormwater impacts or runoff or impervious cover?
No, there should be no increases in runoff or changes in demand for utilities or parking on this site.
Will the proposed subdivision create any potential adverse impacts in the neighborhood?
No, as there'll be no changes in use or no changes to the improvements, there should be no effect on the surrounding properties.
Do you believe that there are hardships unique to this property which would preclude literal compliance with zoning ordinance requirements?
Absolutely. Again, the existing shape and geometry of the property itself, where the buildings are, the existing building coverage is there, the existing proximity, the distance between the buildings is there, does not allow for compliance with the zoning ordinance.
Was any of this hardship self-created by the owner?
No, as he had stated earlier, the structures were on the property when he purchased it, so this was there when he bought it.
Okay, are the variances being requested the minimum variances which will afford relief by allowing the property to be subdivided?
They are.
And will there be positive impact if this relief is granted?
Again, based on the testimony of Mr. Ponce, I would agree that, you know, it could provide for increased usage of these properties and perhaps improvement of them.
Okay. And are all the opinions that you rendered this evening made with a reasonable degree of professional certainty?
They are.
I have no further questions for Mr. Hain.
Okay. Mr. Price, any questions?
I have none, thank you.
Emily, any questions?
No questions.
Looks like everything froze here.
My head's moving.
Yeah, seems all right here. Mark, you all right?
Yep.
Yeah.
I think we just lost Mr. Rabina.
Rabina, yes.
Ms. London, which other applicants do you have?
I have the last two. I
Oh, you
have
have the last two, okay.
Mr. Musa and 420 Walnut Street LLC, Mr. Diaz.
Gotcha, okay.
Okay, Mr. Rabina, you're on mute. You're on mute.
You're still muted.
No questions? Mr. Price?
I don't know who that was.
I don't know what happened. The whole thing just got knocked.
I have no questions.
All right, Emily, any questions?
No questions.
Mr. Harst, any questions?
No questions?
Mr. Fox?
No questions.
Mr. Gatone?
No questions?
I have none. Anybody in the audience have any questions? All right, Ms. London, go ahead.
All right, I don't have anything further. I'll move for the admission of exhibits referenced.
So
Okay.
admitted. They're admitted.
Thank you. And that'll close this
Oh,
appeal.
Phil, does anybody in the audience have any
Oh, okay.
comments?
Anybody in the audience? Any comments or questions? No. All right,
Could we take a 5-minute break, Phil?
sure.
Yeah.
All
All
right,
right, we'll close this appeal. Decision will be issued at next month's meeting. It will be mailed to you also. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Gonna take 5.
Joan, just real quick, did you have any exhibits for the next one for Madison Avenue?
I believe I sent them over, which would have been an aerial photograph of the building, which was also part of the application.
If you need to go to
And
the
then-
bathroom or anything, you can go.
And then a plan, which was marked as Exhibit 2. It's a subdivision plan that shows adjacent properties, shows lot number 1 and Family Dollar and lot number 2.
Would you mind resending that? I don't seem to have received that one.
Okay, let me see if I can do it. I have my phone here. If I do that, I am gonna have to. All right, Ponce exhibits. Brookhaven Avenue site. All right, I'm going to re-forward them, and it's just to Emily and to Steve.
Okay.
All right, forward. Okay. Okay, and Shannon and Ruth and. Okay, I just sent them.
Okay.
We're on just a brief 5 mute that.
We're okay with the John Deere. We're going to do it the way it is.
Can you hear me, John?
Yes,
Oh, you can. Okay, good.
yeah, everything's fine.
Thank you. This is becoming a cottage industry for you, Joan.
Yes, and I'm very thankful that you're having these on Zoom, and very thankful for the hospitality of the Tilden Township supervisors that they let me sit in the back office, take the hearings, and then head to the meeting.
What time does the meeting start?
7, so I come in at about 7:15, 7:30, and which is right after public comment, so it works out fine.
Good.
So you don't necessarily have to go back to in person. Most of the time, I'm telling, go back to in person. This one, stay on Zoom for a while.
Well, I think it works well. We've gotten it down after a couple hundred of these things, and
Yeah.
I think Sandy likes it because
I do.
can be at home. You know, last week, Sandy, at Kutztown, we ended up doing it on the picnic benches outside because they didn't open up the railroad station.
Really?
Really?
Guess it would have been nice. Was it a nice day?
Oh, it was a pleasant day, but
Yeah, I know we were doing in 2020, we were doing hearings outside for a while. And people wanted to keep some distance, and on a nice night, that's not bad.
no. Who are we waiting for? Anybody?
Phil's muted.
Hi, Fred.
Phil, you want to unmute?
I'm unmuted.
Okay, great.
Tom, unmute. Okay. All right. The next matter before us is 2022-23. It is 338 Madison Avenue. Naveed Musa Smart Decisions Development LLC is seeking a use variance to establish an indoor storage facility and commercial office use and appeal the November 30th, 2021 zoning officer determination or seeking special exception approval as equally or less intensive non-conforming use which had previous approval as a warehouse. The subject property is located in the R3 residential zoning district. Okay. Would you swear in our zoning officer, please?
Do you swear that testimony about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Has notice for this appeal been given?
It has.
Mr. Price?
I'll put some exhibits into the record. Exhibit number 1 is the notice. Exhibit number 2 is proof of publication of the notice. Exhibit number 3 is proof of posting of the notice. Exhibit number 4 is the application, including all of its attachments. And exhibit number 5 is the zoning ordinance of the city of Reading as amended.
Okay, thank you. Ms. London, do you want to enter your appearance? We haven't seen you for a while. And then swear in anybody that you would like to have testify, please.
Joan, middle initial E, London, Kozloff Stout, 2640 Westview Drive. Why I'm missing 19610 for Naveed Musa and Smart Decisions Development LLC. Before we begin, Mr. Musa, were you present before these hearings started when the zoning hearing board solicitor explained that while there was a quorum present of the zoning hearing board, that only 4 members were present and that a tie vote would result in zoning relief being denied?
Yes.
And based on that, do you want to proceed with the hearing tonight or continue the hearing to a later date when the full board can hear it?
Proceed, please.
Proceed, all right. My only witness is Mr. Musa, so he'll need to be sworn.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear the testimony about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Musa, could you please state your full name and address?
Naveed M. Musa, 70 Buckwalter Road, Suite 900, Royersford, Pennsylvania, 19468.
Are you a member of Smart Decisions Development LLC?
Yes.
And Smart Decisions Development is the owner of the property at 338 Madison Avenue?
Yes.
And when did you purchase this building?
July of 2021.
And Emily, I'd like you to bring up what's been marked as applicant exhibit 1. And could you identify this for us?
It's an aerial view of the building.
Okay, and does it show the surrounding neighborhood?
Yes, it does.
Do you know approximately when this building was constructed?
Roughly 1900.
And what, to the best of your knowledge, was the past use of the building?
A warehouse.
Was it a warehouse since the time it was constructed?
From my understanding, yes.
What is the current use of the building?
It's currently vacant. It's been vacant since I purchased it.
Okay. Is the lot is this building on a lot that is part of a subdivision?
Yes.
Okay, I have a plan which I've marked as exhibit 2. Could you bring it up, please? Okay, now looking at exhibit 2, is that a plan showing a 2-lot subdivision?
Correct. And lot 2 is my lot.
All right, and can you so lot 2 is the lot that you own with the current building?
Correct.
And what is on the adjacent property?
There's a family, lot 1 is a Family Dollar.
And is that currently open and in use?
Yes.
And are there other adjacent commercial uses?
Yeah, there's a Napa Auto Parts store as well.
And where is that located approximately?
That would be a base parallel, if you will, to lot 1, where lot 1's parking lot is. The what's that mark? It says mark 220.00 If you want to scroll down a little bit more, right there at the bottom left-hand side.
Okay,
Yep,
so that would be adjacent to lot number 1.
correct.
I have, there are 3 photographs which have been marked as exhibits 3A and 3B. If you could look at those, what do these photographs show?
The current condition of the property.
And if the variances that you seek would be granted, would you be doing anything to improve the condition of the property?
Oh, definitely.
And what would you do to improve the condition of the property?
The windows will actually be boarded up, but not in its traditional sense. They would definitely be presentable. We would repoint the bricks, take care of the siding on there, any kind of gutter situation or roof, and firm up the fire escapes, and definitely the landscaping as well.
If the variance were granted, how would you plan to use the building?
Majority of it would be a storage facility, and the first level, there's currently 4 outfitted office spaces, so I would be one of those as an office space as well.
Is storage and commercial office permitted in the R3 zoning district in which the property is located?
Currently, it does not.
Generally, what are the uses that are permitted uses in the R3 district?
It's residential mainly.
Could the building be converted realistically to a residential use?
Realistically, not.
And why not?
From a cost standpoint, as well as the parking mandate of 1.5 spots per unit.
Parking issues there.
Have you looked into other uses?
I have, and the parking seems to be the number one issue with that. What that and the cost associated with other uses.
Okay, and what other uses specifically have you looked into?
I looked into a shared office concept. That was one, and that was in the residential, make it into apartments. Those are the 2 main uses I looked into.
And because of the parking, you did not believe that that was feasible?
Yeah, parking and cost, but parking was a huge one.
Okay. Have there been other uses that have been approved for this building?
I believe there was like a work artist studio and like a dance studio. But I don't believe the work artist studio ever even took place into this one.
Okay, and what about the dance studio use?
When I purchased it, there was signs of a dance studio. It wasn't operational or anything like that. We saw like some decals on the door and some banisters there, but that was all. So if it was being used for that, it didn't last very long.
Have you consulted with professionals on the storage use?
Yes, I have.
And if the relief were granted, would you retain professionals in commercial storage?
Absolutely.
Can you describe to the board with whom you have spoken and what professionals and trades would be engaged?
Sure. I spoke to Janus International. They have a local rep in the Lancaster area where all they do is storage facilities. They design and build them in current structures. I spoke to their general contractor out of York, Pennsylvania, which is their company's called Storage Construction. I spoke to Nate Jones, or the director. We walked the facility in depth on several occasions, and also spoke to SAA Architects based out of York, Pennsylvania as well, to their VP of Designs, Danica Dallum, and if this zoning gets approved, the variance gets approved, they'll be the ones basically running the project from soup to nuts.
Okay, I'd like you to go to what has been marked as Exhibit 4, the next exhibit. All right, and did you prepare this?
Yeah, I did this one. I did this drawing here.
All right, and can you describe for the board what is shown in this plan?
Yeah, so when I walked the facility with the storage construction facility company who would essentially build this, we walked it in depth several times, and this is what they deem to be the best use for every single floor. For the most part, floors 2, 3, and 4, and this would give the most, maximize the space in that floor right there. So you're looking at essentially about roughly 50 units almost of storage facilities in that floor.
And what types of items would be stored?
Be whatever someone's relocating, so furniture, nothing hazardous or anything like that. It would just be furniture, clothing, people relocating, whatever they would need necessary, stuff like that. We wouldn't have any kind of vehicles or toxics.
Build their storage unit.
Would it be personal, family, and household items? Would that be the best way to describe it?
Yes,
Yeah,
yeah.
those are the smallest units.
And is there parking on the site?
Yes, there is.
How many spaces are available?
I believe has about a dozen, about 10 total parking spaces are currently there.
And what would be the hours of operation of the site?
Talking to the storage company, they have a technology which actually will allow it to be a 24-hour usage, would not require gates, being that everything would be online mobile access, so they could come and go on a 24-hour basis if that was allowed.
Would would it be secure access?
Yes, absolutely. Every
And
from the exterior to the interior.
Yeah, can you describe the access and security system used to
Yeah.
allow an individual to access his or her own unit, but to prevent crime or vandalism?
Sure. So in the traditional setting of the security of a storage facility, you would need gates, and you could have, and if it will be manned by an actual individual. With the new technology that's been approved based off of Bluetooth technology, you can remove the gates and actually remove personnel being on site. And there will be basically motion sensor detectors, lighting systems, as well as everything will be on a code basis unique to that specific user. So any given time, we would know who's accessing it at all points of entry and as well as exiting the facility. And everything would have cameras on the inside and outside, as well as appropriate lighting.
Is there an office which would be staffed during business hours?
No, the office space is there would be if an individual wants to rent it themselves for whatever their own uses, but the staffing would not be required, being that everything is an automated system.
Okay. Is there one or more restrooms on the site?
Yes, there's actually 3. There's there's 4 there. There's 1 on every single floor.
Okay, will you have rules in place as to items which cannot be stored, such as hazardous chemicals or other dangerous items?
Yes.
Will the storage use meet all federal, state, and local laws and regulations applicable, including building and fire codes?
Yes.
Will there be, let me rephrase that. Will there be traffic coming to the site that would require more parking than is on the site?
No, not at all.
And why is that?
The traffic will be occasional. It's not like a steady flow of people going in like a grocery store or anything like that. It's just when someone needs to come to stores, so it's usually at 2 times. You come to put the items in, you come to take the items out, and that's really basically about it. So there won't be constant traffic, so the demand of parking will be extremely minimal.
Do you believe that this use is less intense than a dance studio would have been?
Yes.
And why is that?
The dance studio usually has set hours and you have recitals and stuff like that. So you would have people coming in and, depending on the size of the family, so on and so forth, where this is just usually 1-2 people at the most time coming in, using the facility for the short term and then leaving the premises. And that's really about it.
Will you be changing the building footprint in any way?
No, not at all.
Will there be any change in the height of the building?
No.
Do you believe that there will be any negative impacts on the surrounding neighborhood as a result of this use if the relief were granted?
No, not at all.
And why not?
We're not touching, we've already touched on several cases with the parking as at a premium, especially in the city. So we're not touching that at all. We're not looking at improved traffic or increased traffic. And if anything, it would be a definitely welcome change, or at least addition, because there are currently 2 commercial spots there. This will be another commercial building there as well. And with the additional security and actually making it a productive use of that facility. Right now, it's just vacant.
Are there conditions unique to the property which would create a hardship in literally interpreting the R3 zoning?
Yes, the building is old. It's over 100 years old. So it was basically constructed before zoning went into effect.
Right. Is the variance requested the minimum variance that will afford relief?
Yes,
Okay, and do you believe that the granting the requested relief will benefit the neighborhood?
absolutely. I mean, you have a vacant building there that becomes production, so you'll reduce squatting, you'll reduce any kind of vandalism in the area. And again, it would definitely help increase value. And then you have a building that's there that's currently vacant and will be open to reassessment, obviously, as well.
Okay. I don't have any further questions.
Okay, Mr. Price, questions?
Yeah, the access to the second, third, and is there a fourth floor? I didn't hear that.
Yes, there's there's a first, second, and third, correct.
Do you have elevators in that building for people to bring their materials in and out or not?
Yes, there's an elevator in there, and the very first, I believe the second exhibit, between lot 1 and lot 2, there's a docking station there. And that docking station is split between the Family Dollar and myself. And so they could go right to that. That elevator is not functional, but there is one there.
And you have 12 off-street parking spaces for this building, correct?
Roughly, yeah.
And you said there's approximately 50 units per floor for the second, third, and fourth floors?
Second and third and fourth, depending on what we're looking at on the sizes, you can get roughly a 50 on each floor. But realistically, I think second and third make the best suit for as a 50 units rate those. Where the top one, being that you have somewhat of a pitched roof, we would actually probably make it less than 50 units on that one.
All right, well, thank you. I have no other questions.
Okay, thank you. Emily, questions, comments?
So just to confirm, there won't be any actual employees on site?
Correct.
Okay, and then I'll just make a comment that if you are given relief, we will need to see the parking on a site plan, and that they will need to be clearly marked once improvements are made to the property.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Fox?
Yes, I have a couple of questions, just to elaborate a little bit more on the commercial use that you talked about. You're not sure how much commercial space would be available, whether it be 2 offices or 3 offices. That's something that's unknown yet.
No, so currently the current layout at the bottom, it already has prefabricated walls there, which actually has 4 offices. I would not be using all 4 of those. I would only be using one of those.
Oh, so what would the rest of the space be? Vacant?
We would convert those into actual storage facilities.
All right, so the parking or the area for one commercial, you would only need what, 1.5 parking spaces or two parking spaces reserved for that part of it?
I believe 2, correct.
All
So
right.
for the office, we would calculate that based on square footage of the office. And so we would determine exactly how many parking spaces he would need once like an actual site plan is provided.
So you would be using the 1 space per 200 square foot of office space? Is that correct?
Yes, for that office on the first floor, that's what we would utilize.
All right. And so if somebody wants to come at night or during the day, they would have to back up to that loading dock where the freight elevator is now?
No, there's a front access as well as the loading dock, and there actually is a basement with the egress, so they can come to the basement. So depending where their storage facility is, they could use the loading dock they wanted to, the front, or even the basement. So they have 3 points, as well as there are fire escapes on the one side there, which we really don't plan to use that, but it's really, they have 3 points of access.
Well, now I understand the freight elevator is one.
Mhm.
And the other 2, where are the other 2 access points
In-
besides the freight elevator?
They're in front of the building where the parking spots are. There's 2 entrances right there.
Is that's very close to Madison Avenue? There's some steps going up, right, at the corner of the building?
No, it's actually facing, so it's not on the corner side, it's actually more into the parking lot.
Yeah, facing the parking lot.
Yes.
That would be the second access. Now, where would the other access be, the third?
Between the loading dock And then the actually we just talked about in between there, there's a steps that go down and check to the basement, if you will.
Okay,
And there's a door there which you can come on that one as well.
all right. And now one other question. It's an old building.
Yes.
And I know somebody that worked in there many, many years ago. And I'm going to ask you this question. I know you had people walking through there. Have you had any kind of a structural engineer authorizing and clearing that building for the amount of weight that would be in there? Has there been a structural engineer look at that building and given you some written evidence?
Written evidence, no. What they've told us that it requires 125 pounds, I believe, per square foot. And they base that off of the material of the storage facility. And it's usually the beams underneath. So when we went and did a walkthrough with the engineers, they saw triple beams on some of them, for the most part on the basis of every on the floors. So they're extremely confident that if this gets approved and that needed to be in writing, they would not have any issues providing that in writing.
And the condition of the roof of that building?
It needs a new roof.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Gattone. Jeff? All right. Mr. Harst, any questions?
No questions.
I really don't have any questions at this time.
I just unmuted. I have a question.
Go ahead. I
Yes,
asked you, but you were
Yeah,
muted.
but I'm sorry. I gotta, just if Miss London, if you could just show me, where's the parking located? Show me. Is the parking Madison Avenue?
The
No.
parking is actually on lot 2. Emily, if you'll go to the plan, share the screen, and you can see that on lot 2, you can see parking spaces
I didn't
along
see
there.
so-
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you see it, Jeff?
All right, I see, was that 3 spaces? Where? I'm having a tough time
So there's
trying to discern how many spaces that is.
that's, if you look, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 spaces there. And then if you look up top, there are no lines there currently. So I just had to draw them in. Then there's spots up there, roughly 4 spots on that side.
And where do you access those spaces from? I see there's KC Associates. I see Madison Avenue. Where's the driveway into those parking?
From Madison Avenue as well as from 4th Street.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Does anybody in the audience have any questions of this gentleman? All right, seeing none. Ms. London?
I have no further witnesses. I'll move for the admission of exhibits 1, 2, and move for the admission of exhibits.
They're admitted.
Okay, thank you. All right. Anybody in the audience have any questions? I don't see anybody. All right, hearing that, we'll close this appeal. A decision will be made at next month's meeting. You need not be here. Decision will be mailed to you, and we thank all of you.
Thank you for your time, everyone.
All right, take care.
Good night, Naveen.
Okay. Next matter before us is Appeal 2022-24. And it involves 416, 418, and 420 Walnut Street. George Diaz, Walnut Street Properties LLC, is seeking a special exception approval for adaptive reuse to establish 18 residential apartment units, variances from minimal habitable space requirement, the number of permitted studio units, off-street parking requirements, dimensional variances, minimal lot size, and an appeal of the March 13th, 2022 zoning officer determination. The subject property is located in an R3 residential zoning district. Would you swear in our zoning officer, please?
You swear the testimony about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Okay, has notice for this appeal been given?
It has.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Price.
I'll put some exhibits into the record. Exhibit number 1 is the notice. Exhibit number 2 is proof of publication of the notice. Exhibit number 3 is proof of posting of the notice. Exhibit number 4 is the application, including all of its attachments. And exhibit number 5 is the zoning ordinance of the city of Reading as amended.
Okay, thank you. Ms. London, you want to enter your appearance and then we'll swear in anybody you're going to have testify.
Enter my appearance for the applicant, Joan, middle initial E, London, Kozloff Stout, 2640 Westview Drive, Wyomissing 19610. Before we begin, I'd like to ask Mr. Diaz. Mr. Diaz, were you present prior to the start of hearings where Mr. Price explained that while there was a quorum of the zoning hearing board present, that all of the members were not there, only 4 members are present, and that a tie vote would result in a denial of relief?
Yes.
And based on that, do you want to proceed with the hearing tonight? Or do you want to continue the hearing to a later date?
Proceed.
Proceed? All right, we'll proceed then. All right, the witnesses will be Mr. Diaz and Mark C. Christman.
All right, well, they both please raise their right hand. We need to get
Okay,
Mark Christman.
Mark, can you please put on your camera and unmute your microphone?
Yeah, Mr. Christman's still muted.
There we
go.
I'm unmuted, but I'm trying to find where I'm on my phone, which I'm not.
Just swear him in.
Now he's muted. He's muted again. All right.
Muted himself, unfortunately.
Let's just get him unmuted at least.
Mark, please unmute yourself.
I am unmuted.
Okay.
All right, now you are.
Fine.
Do you swear the testimony about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do. I do.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll call Mr. Diaz first witness. Mr. Diaz, could you please state your full name?
George Diaz Jr.
Are you employed?
Yes, for the Abraham Lincoln. I'm the property manager.
Okay, and do you also live on the premises of the Abraham Lincoln?
Correct, I do.
Are you a member of the LLC Walnut Street Properties?
Yes, I am.
And is Walnut Street Properties LLC the owner of the property at 416 to 420 Walnut Street?
Yes, we are.
Are you familiar with the history of the property?
Very much so, yes.
And what was the prior use of this property?
Initially, it was residential, and then it was a group home, which was named ADAPT.
And what is its current use?
The property is currently sitting vacant.
Okay, do you know how long it's been sitting vacant?
I'm not sure, but I know it's been multiple years.
Okay, what is the area of the lot?
5,400 square feet.
When you purchased the property, did it have the same existing building and improvements on the property now?
Correct.
Have you made any changes to the lot or building?
No.
Are you asking for a variance from the minimum lot size of 5,500 square feet to allow you to continue to use the property?
Yes.
Okay, what is your proposed use of the property?
Residential. We'd like to bring in 18 apartments.
Okay, will these be market rate rental apartments?
Yes, yes.
Is there a demand in the city of Reading for apartment units?
Yes, based on my work being the property manager for the Abraham Lincoln. I currently have a waiting list for this property.
When you say this property,
I'm
Or-
sorry, for the Abraham Lincoln, at the Abraham Lincoln, we currently have a waiting list for young individuals looking for a 1-bedroom. There's a high demand and very low inventory.
And what would be your target market for the project, which is before the zoning hearing board tonight?
Single adults, young professionals, maybe some college students, especially with the demand of young professionals coming downtown. We'd like to have some inventory to provide for them.
Okay, but this is not going to be primarily student housing, is that correct?
No, it's market rate apartments open for anyone.
Okay, are you familiar with off-street parking requirements for residential uses?
Yes,
Does the number of apartment units trigger off-street parking requirements? Based on your
Yes.
knowledge of it? And is that requirement the 1.5 spaces per unit?
yes,
Okay, for 18 units, how many spaces will be needed?
27.
And are 27 spaces available anywhere on the site?
No,
To the
No.
best of your knowledge, has there ever been off-street parking on the site?
no,
Is there any way that parking could be provided on site?
no,
So if there were parking requirements, is it correct that they would need to be accommodated off-site by agreement?
yes,
Have you had any discussions regarding parking off-site?
yes, I have with Alan Schuman.
Okay, and what have you discussed with Mr. Schuman on parking?
Having the opportunity to park at the Abraham Lincoln Hotel.
Okay, and is Mr. Schuman the owner, or one of his businesses, the owner of the Abraham Lincoln Hotel?
Correct,
And does he also control the parking garage or an entity controlled by him?
correct.
How far is the Abraham Lincoln garage from the building?
Approximately 500 feet.
Okay, is there another option for off-street parking?
Yes, there's a surface lot which is adjacent to the property.
Okay,
I've had discussions with that owner as well.
all right, and approximately how many spaces might be available on that site?
40.
Right. Are you aware of the zoning ordinance maximum distance for off-site parking of 300 feet?
Yes, I am.
Okay, and why do you believe that parking at the Abraham Lincoln, which exceeds that amount, should be permitted by this board and modify this requirement in the special exception?
Not everyone in the building will own a car. Some, especially if less able to walk, would be accommodated based on the surface lot. So for others, approximately 200 feet away, based on the surface lot. So they'll have two options if they want to park indoors or inside the parking garage and be covered, or if they prefer the surface lot.
Okay, with the surface lot, just to clarify, is the surface lot within the 300 feet?
Yes, 200 feet.
All right, and is that privately owned or is that owned by the Reading Parking Authority?
Privately owned.
Okay, do you believe that there would be any negative impacts on the community if the special exception and variances would be granted?
No,
Why not?
I think we're going to impact the neighborhood, and bringing in apartments along a street that already accommodates residential and commercial traffic is going to impact the area in a positive way. Them especially having 1-bedrooms where, as I mentioned, there's a low inventory right now and a high demand based on the young individuals coming on board and the professionals seeking to live downtown. So I think the parking is plentiful as a surface lot and the Abraham Lincoln garage.
Now, one of the variances that is being requested with this adaptive reuse application is for apartment units and studio units that are of less than the minimum size requirements in the zoning ordinance. And we'll talk about that more in Mr. Christman's testimony. But do you believe that allowing that will have any negative effect on the surrounding community or promote any type of overcrowding?
No, I think it keeps a building occupied versus it sitting vacant. And based on its prior use, it being a group home, versus today it would be a market rate of apartment building, allowing it open to the public and I want to say a cleaner, ran, safer rental housing.
And are those smaller apartments based on the pre-existing layout of the property?
Yes.
Okay. And why do you had stated that you believe that the project would have a positive impact on the community? Why do you believe that?
Based on my current position as a property manager, I've seen a lot of people come in and want to live downtown, but not be able to find an opportunity or a place that fits their liking. So I'd like to see more individuals downtown, single young professionals. I think it would lead towards a positive future. And especially having, not that I want to make it a college thing, but having the opportunity to take some classes would also benefit them, especially being young professionals.
I have no further questions for Mr. Diaz.
Okay, let's start with Mr. Price. Question?
I have no questions.
Okay. Emily, questions, comments?
I do. So have you had actual conversations with the owner for that surface lot at 127 North 4th Street?
Yes.
Okay. If the board should give you relief, we would need to see an agreement with the owner. We do have a form that they would need to fill out, and we would need to see a site plan and also determine that they do have enough spaces to lease out to you.
Yeah, we would agree with that as conditions of the approval.
Okay, another question. Is there a reason why you settled on 18 units? Could it not be less in order to meet the habitable area for required by the zoning ordinance?
We're simply working based on the existing layout. So we were just pretty much using what's already there and just updating it.
So the 18 units are currently existing.
The layout for the 18 units is pre-existing, yes.
Okay. That's all I have.
All right, Mr. Gattone, question?
No questions.
Mr. Harsh?
No questions?
Mr. Fox?
Yes, or maybe Mr. Chrisman could better answer this, but in reading the staff report from zoning, can we be more specific of the 18 units that are there? It says 9 do not meet the minimum requirement, but I don't know what they mean by studio or small 1-bedroom. Could somebody tell me of the 18, how many are studio, how many are 1-bedroom, and how many are 2-bedroom?
And I can tell you, as far as studio versus 1-bedroom, there is a flexibility there because there is a limit in the zoning ordinance as to the number of studio apartments allowed. The number allowed would be no more than 25%, which would be 4. And we are requesting in the alternative a variance to allow additional studio apartments beyond the 4, which would be compliant as studio apartments. Again, the applicant is willing to be flexible as to whether these would be studio apartments with a variance granted for the number of studio apartments, or 1-bedroom apartments with a variance or accommodation in adaptive reuse granted from the minimum area.
So it's 4 studios and 14 1-bedrooms.
14 studios.
No, 4 studios
Yeah.
and 14 1-bedrooms.
All right.
And we just need to know the sizes of those. I think that's will focus the issue.
Yes.
Okay, and Mr. Chrisman will be able to testify.
Okay. Anything else, Mr. Fox?
No, that's it for now.
Okay, I don't have anything at this point. Does anybody in the audience have any questions, Mr. Diaz? All right,
I
seeing
do
none.
believe there is someone. Now, do you have questions or did you have comments? I'm sorry. No, sorry, we can't hear you.
Well, listen, if they connect later, we'll allow them to do whatever they want to do. And we'll let Ms. London move on and then we'll come back to them.
That'll work, yes. Okay, it looks like, okay, yeah, Ms. Ramirez has agreed. I'll call, the next witness will be Mark Christman.
Yes,
He's been sworn.
I'm here.
We'll qualify Mr. Crispin as an expert.
Okay, that's fine. And marked as Exhibit 1 is Mr. Christman's resume. I'd like to include that in the record to show his education, experience, and qualifications.
All right, submitted.
Okay, thank you. All right, Mr. Christman, were you retained by George Diaz to prepare plans for the adaptive reuse of the property located at 416 to 420 Walnut Street?
Yes,
And for what intended use were you asked to prepare plans?
as apartments.
I have what has been marked as applicant Exhibit 2. If Emily could put that on the shared screen. Okay. Okay, and are these the plans that you prepared?
I'm afraid not.
Okay. Can you scroll to the next page? Okay, are those part of the plans that you prepared?
No,
Was that a yes or a no?
No, that
no.
appears to be a no.
Well, why doesn't he just
There.
testify to the plans that he prepared from his own notes there?
I'm sorry.
Get him onto the square footage. The
Appears
night
that
draws near.
Yeah, it appears that that is not a correct set of plans there. You're
Mr.
correct.
Chrisman, if you'd like, you do have, you are able to share from your device if you're able to.
Unfortunately, I am at an event and I'm working from my phone.
Okay,
And
no
I
problem.
don't have the PDF. I mean, I have hard copies with me. I do not have a PDF on my phone.
The real questions here are the square footage of the 4 studios and the 14 one-bedrooms. Do you have that
Yes.
information?
I do have that in front of me. Yes, sir.
Okay, can you tell us the dimensions of the studios and the one-bedroom apartments?
Well, the first floor at the begin on the first floor, the three units that are in the front are listed as studio units. The first one is apartment 100 is 456 square feet. Apartment 105, apologize, this is like really small. Apartment 105 is 384 square feet. And apartment 104 is 411 square feet. The other one bedroom, there's two one bedrooms on that floor. Apartment 101, which is 531 square feet. Apartment 102, which is 472 square feet. And then there's a 2-bedroom, which is 742 square feet.
Right.
Shall I move on to the second floor or we
Yes,
want to do one floor at a time?
move on to the second floor, please.
Okay. All right. Now the second floor, the 3 across the front can either be 1-bedrooms or studios. Right now they're shown as 1-bedroom apartments, and apartment 200 is 497 square feet. Apartment 205 is 458 square feet. And apartment 204 is 502 square feet.
500, repeat that, 500.
502, sir.
Are these your plans, Mr. Chrisman, on the screen?
Yes,
500 and what?
502, Mr. Fox.
Okay, and these were provided with the application, correct?
Yes.
Okay, these are the plans provided with the application. Right. All right, Now, were these, in your engagement for this project, had you researched prior uses of the building?
To my knowledge, I can't say I researched it deeply. I knew the previous use was for Adapt, which was a halfway house. So I'm sure everybody knows that.
Okay, with the plans that you drew, were they based upon the layout of the building?
They incorporated certain elements of the building, like locations of bathrooms and existing plumbing locations and such, yes.
Okay, and
And we utilized as much of the existing walls as we could because of structural elements.
okay, and when you utilize the structural elements, did you preserve those weight-bearing and structural elements at
Yeah.
as much as you could?
Absolutely, yes.
And would there, in removing those and moving them to make larger apartments, would that create prohibitive cost?
It would definitely become costly for the developer, Mr. Diaz in this case, because you start to get into cost beginning with an engineer, a structural engineer, and then you have the cost of demoing the walls, shoring the walls while they're being demoed so they do not collapse, inserting in the lintels and then support for the lintels. So yeah, it becomes very time consuming and very costly.
Okay. Are you familiar with the
Hold up, Ms. London, can I stop
Yeah.
you for a second? Whoever's got a TV or a radio or background noise, please mute yourself because you can't hear the testimony.
I apologize, Mr. Price. That may very well be me. I'm at the Santander for a chamber event.
Right. Well, then you're gonna have to go outside because I can hardly hear you.
Okay. Okay, no problem. Give me one moment.
Testifying.
Okay,
Yep.
that's fine.
No problem. Just give me one moment.
While we wait for Mr. Chrisman, if Ms. Ramirez, if you're not able to connect to your audio, please type in your question or comment in the chat and I'll be able to read it off for you.
Okay, what we'll do is we'll address that at the conclusion of Mr. Chrisman's testimony. We can go back to Mr. Diaz and Mr. Chrisman might be able to answer that as well.
I think going forward, we need to have some parameters about, you know, I get people have other things to do, but if you're committed as a witness, you need to be committed to a quiet room. Because
Yes, I would agree.
we're almost at 8 o'clock tonight, and this is ridiculous to me.
Well, we're almost done.
Phil, may I suggest that we have it a workshop either on the 18th or 19th at my office?
That would be fine.
So I'll have them or Glenn to send out an email. You guys pick whatever date works, we'll have coffee and whatnot.
Yeah, that sounds good. Either the 18th or the 19th. I'll send out a note with and copy you on it.
All right, thank you.
I am back.
Okay.
Okay. Mr. Chrisman, go ahead.
Okay. Could you please refresh me where we left off at? I believe I left off on the second floor. Is that correct?
Yes.
Sure. You had given the dimensions of the units and attached to the application are the
Okay.
plans that you drew.
Okay.
So you are aware of the zoning ordinance requirement that is 440 square feet minimum for a studio apartment, 550 square feet for a 1-bedroom, and 700 square feet for a 2-bedroom, correct?
Yes, I am.
And I believe you already answered that you preserved structural elements and load-bearing walls in preparing these designs because to remove those would be cost prohibitive and you use the existing layout of apartments that had been there in the past. Was that your testimony?
That is correct, yes.
Are you familiar with the requirement of a maximum of 25% of units that may be studio apartments?
I am.
Under current standards, is it correct that only 4 studio apartments would be permitted?
That is correct.
And when you designed the studio apartments, did you design those with the current layout in mind?
Yeah, well, as I said, once we reach the second floor, you have the option of a studio or a small 1-bedroom apartment. However, we run into the case then that we are under the square footage that is required for a 1-bedroom apartment of 550 square feet.
All right, we'll go on to the exterior of the site. Are you familiar with the exterior of the site?
Yes, I am.
Is there off-street parking on the site?
Not on the 3 addresses, not 416 and 420.
Yeah, do you believe that there ever has been off-street parking on the site?
Not to my knowledge.
Do you believe that there are hardships unique to this property which would preclude literal compliance with zoning ordinance requirements for off-street parking and minimum apartment size?
Could you repeat the question, please?
Do you believe that there are hardships unique to this property which would preclude literal compliance with zoning ordinance requirements for parking and for minimum apartment size?
It's very similar to most properties in the city where, you know, with the 1.5 spaces required for each apartment, it's difficult to maintain that on the property itself. So yes, I guess would be the answer to your question.
And were any of the hardships, whether it is the interior partitioning of the property or the off-street parking issue or the lot size, was any of this self-created by the owner?
No, the building was clearly built and in place for residential use prior to the adoption of the zoning ordinance, you know, due to the age of the building, and was made into units of the current sizes at the time of construction. To do a lot of repartitioning, as we discussed earlier, due to structural situations, it would be costly.
If variances are needed and the modification can't simply be granted as part of the special exception for adaptive reuse, will the grant of the variances create any negative impacts on neighboring properties in the surrounding area?
No, I don't believe so. The property, when it was occupied, was in use as apartments. There will be no traffic impact, as this is a city street for which there have been traffic planning for residences into account since the beginning. And additionally, parking can be provided off-site nearby, as Mr. Diaz has stated, and the smaller units are what previously existed.
Do you believe that the variances requested are the minimum variances which will afford relief?
Yes, I do.
Will there be any impact on light and air to neighboring properties?
No, the footprint of the building and the height of the building is not changing.
Okay, will there be positive community impact in your opinion if this relief were granted?
Yes, absolutely. It improves the building, which is now vacant. It rids the block of a blighted building and replaces it with one being improved and brought up to code.
Are all the opinions you rendered this evening made with a reasonable degree of professional certainty?
Yes, they have been.
Okay, no further questions.
Okay, we're going to go through questions with the board and our people, and then we're going to get to the Ramirez family. All right, Mr. Gattone, questions, comments?
No questions.
Mr. Fox,
No questions.
Mr. Price,
None.
Mr. Harsh,
No questions?
Emily,
I do not, but I do have a, Ms. Ramirez has provided me a question via the chat.
okay, I didn't quite catch what you said, but
So Ms. Ramirez was having audio issues, so she provided her question via the chat.
okay, all
So
right.
I can do that when you're ready.
Do it
All
now.
right. Why don't we do them now? Let's get them back up.
Okay, so it's Ms. Marilyn Ramirez. She had a question. Even though there seems to be a plan for parking, how can we guarantee that 18 units would not use the off-street park, the street parking located in front of the building? We have lived in this area for 35 years and parking is a major issue.
Okay,
Let me address that. If there were to be a zoning approval for this use, there would be required leases with either the Abe Lincoln or the surface lot with designated parking spots for the tenants of that building.
and those spaces would be designated.
Correct.
Okay, other questions, comments? Are there any more?
I believe she is typing, if we want to give her a second.
Okay,
You guys still can't hear me, right?
We can barely hear you.
I just don't want to waste your time. What's going on here?
Who would be doing, this is Ms. Marilyn Ramirez again, who is doing the maintenance outside? I have been waiting for a while for all the properties near my home.
that would be the property owner's responsibility. And should that not be done, that would probably be something that the property maintenance division of the city make a phone call to them and they'll come down, because that is a property owner's responsibility to keep debris and weeds and all the other things, in compliance for safety and health reasons. So if there's a problem, you call the city code services and property maintenance, and they'll send somebody out and they'll either correct it or probably wind up with a fine.
Okay, she said, thank you. Ms. Ramirez, if you could please type out in the chat your full name and your address so we can have it on the record.
All right, are there any more questions for the applicant? If not, we can keep moving, Mr. Rubino.
Okay. Anybody else have any comments or questions that they would like to add at this point? Anybody want to testify for or against the application? I've been forgetting that tonight. I don't think there is anybody. All right.
I don't know, I don't know if you wanted, if Sandy wanted me to read in the Ms. Ramirez information for the record.
That would be fine.
Her name is Marilyn, Marilyn Ramirez at 410 Walnut Street, Reading, PA.
Okay. Does that need to be sworn?
No.
Okay.
Yes, question.
Well, it was questions, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Ms. London?
I don't have any further witnesses. Move for the admission of exhibits.
They're admitted.
I thank you.
Thank you.
I would just like again to apologize to the board. I'm sorry, I thought I was far enough away from the noise that it wasn't going to be an issue, and I apologize. I have the utmost respect for the board and its time, and I apologize for the delay.
Okay, well, thank you, sir. All right, there's just one thing that I'd like to say, but there might be people listening or watching. I think one of the things that this board is very cognizant of is that parking is a big problem. And over the years, we've had lots of promises that people don't own cars, and all of a sudden the cars reappear. We know mathematically there are far more cars registered in the city of Reading than there are parking spaces available in the city of Reading. And the second thing is that we appreciate that when you're redoing a building, that sometimes just for practical purposes, things need to be a little smaller or a little different than what is required. However, I want people to understand that we look at this, we're providing habitat for humans. We're not sheltering pets and we're not sheltering farm animals. And we've seen all kinds of situations where people are going to be subjected to some living conditions that just simply aren't right. So oftentimes, you know, you will see us do things, you'll say, well, why did you approve this? Because it looked similar to what you denied for somebody else. Well, you have to look deeper than that. Each one of these things kind of stands on its own, even though you're kind of looking at a general picture of things. So I just want everybody to keep that in mind when they read our decisions or they listen to these cases. So I thank you all for everything that you've done, and it's been an interesting evening. So we thank all of you, and that closes the zoning meeting for the month of May. We'll see you back here in June, and we'll issue our decisions at that time. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Steve.